Imagine if Hollywood's greatest legends, icons who defined glamour, mystery, and power, had taken one final close-up. Not in front of a camera, but in the pages of their own secret diaries. What would they reveal? Hidden addictions, forbidden loves, crushing loneliness, meticulous records of a life lived for the spotlight, but written in total darkness. Tonight on Classic Hollywood, we crack open those pages, and what spills out? It's raw, it's shocking, and it's heartbreakingly human. These aren't just stars, they were survivors. Let's turn the pages together. Number 1. Greta Garbo, the Queen of Silence. Exposed. Greta Garbo didn't need 100 lines of dialogue to leave you breathless. She could say more with one glance than most actors could with an entire script. But what if the truest version of Garbo, the most vulnerable, most human, was never on the silver screen, but hidden in pages locked away for decades? In the year 2000, the Rosenbach Museum in Philadelphia unsealed 87 of Garbo's personal letters. Most were addressed to playwright and poet Mercedes D'Acosta, a woman long rumored to be more than just a friend. Inside those letters, the myth unraveled. Mercedes and I share a darkness no camera can catch. That single sentence lit up academic circles, sparking heated debates and rewriting biographies overnight. These weren't idle words between colleagues. They were deeply coded, emotionally charged fragments of a private love story written in an era when that kind of truth could destroy a career. 181 secret pet names were buried in those pages. Nicknames, references, and inside jokes so complex that researchers had to cross-reference them with Mercedes' own diaries just to decode them. Each alias, each flourish, each silent scream tucked behind a flourish of ink. But this wasn't just about romance. Also recovered with the letters were Garbo's personal notebooks. In them, a staggering level of precision, daily records of her shooting day weight, blood pressure levels logged across grueling production weeks. Odd entries like, audience at premiere 42, sat in back row. Garbo wasn't living life. She was documenting it, measuring it, trying to hold control in a world that controlled her image at every turn. One entry from 1933 stands out. Total studio fines, $15,300. Adjusted for today, that's over $300,000, mostly for refusing interviews and public appearances. And then, scribbled beneath it in her trademark minimal style, silence is cheaper than lawyers. Underlined, twice. That's the Garbo the studio feared. That's the woman MGM allegedly offered hush money to keep these letters buried. But the Rosenbach Museum refused to hand them over. They weren't protecting Garbo's legacy, they were revealing it. And the most haunting entry of all? May 12th, 1937. The cloud again, a Swedish winter in my skull. Mental health historians now believe Garbo was describing chronic depression, years before the language even existed to explain it. Hollywood sold us Greta Garbo the enigma, the cool, aloof, unknowable goddess. But her own words tell a different story. Not a mystery, not a myth, but a woman, fiercely private, heartbreakingly self-aware, and forced to live in silence so others could enjoy the illusion. Number 2. Joan Crawford, the Ice Queen's Burn Book. For decades, Joan Crawford was the picture of polished perfection. Regal cheekbones, sharp shoulders, maternal warmth. Or at least, that's what the studios wanted you to believe. But in June 2024, beneath a layer of dust and studio legend, a tattered composition notebook was discovered in the archives of the Margaret Herrick Library. Scrawled on the cover in fading ink, JC, my eyes only. Inside, a raw, obsessive, and often shockingly cruel catalog of Crawford's real life. A woman meticulously scripting her survival in a world that never gave her the final cut. These weren't diary entries, they were tactical reports, psychological warfare, a burn book before Mean Girls ever hit theaters. The targets? Her contemporaries, and no one was spared. Davis, 8 wrinkles. Stanwyck, 5. FA needs lessons in rage. Initials stood in for names, but Crawford's venom was crystal clear. She didn't just compete, she kept score. She even tracked box office grosses in red ink, obsessively comparing herself to other actresses, week by week, dollar by dollar. Every smile on screen was backed by a tally sheet off it. A secret love affair, and the cost to bury it. One section of the notebook spanned 17 pages, chronicling a clandestine relationship with a 19-year-old male co-star during the filming of Mildred Pierce. Taped inside? Polaroids? Stapled beneath them? Wire transfer receipts. Payments, it seemed, to keep the affair buried deep in the shadows. This wasn't scandal. It was damage control, executed with chilling efficiency. Staging her own death. In what might be the most surreal part of the diary, Crawford included a fully drafted press release for her own funeral, complete with lighting instructions, stage directions, and a parting quote she wanted etched into her legacy. She died, as always, lit from the left. Even in death, Crawford wanted to be in control of her framing. Motherhood, rewritten. What truly stunned readers and reopened old wounds were the entries that touched on her role as a mother. Yes, there was one celebratory note. April 1963, no wire hangers this week, victory. But alongside that came volatile breakdowns. Pulse, 140 after gin night. Screamed at Helga for no reason. Parts of her infamous portrayal in Mommy Dearest were contradicted. Others were confirmed with brutal clarity. This wasn't a one-dimensional monster or a martyr. This was a woman on the brink, terrified of irrelevance, addicted to control and hemorrhaging secrets. The world thought they knew Joan Crawford, star, survivor, screen siren. But her diary tells a different story. A woman obsessed not just with her image, but with owning the narrative no matter the cost. She didn't just act the part, she wrote the scene, cast the shadows, and called action on her own pain. Number 3. Marilyn Monroe. The diary behind the smile. She was the most photographed woman in the world. A walking fantasy. A name whispered with awe. Marilyn Monroe wasn't just a star, she was a cultural eclipse. But behind the red lipstick and camera flashes was a woman writing in the shadows. In 2010, a posthumous collection of her private writings titled Fragments was published. Inside were 169 pieces, torn diary pages, hotel stationery, scribbled notes. Together, they formed a portrait far more fragile and far more powerful than anything Hollywood ever sold. Smile anyway. One note written at 6:17 a.m. on Waldorf Astoria hotel paper reads, 32 press photographers outside. Smile anyway. She'd just woken up. She was already exhausted, but she knew the machine needed a grin. This wasn't a movie line, it was a survival command. That phrase, smile anyway, appears again and again. Sometimes next to press appointments, other times beneath paychecks that didn't match her male co-stars. River of No Return. Mitchum. $175,000, Monroe? $100,000? Smile anyway. This wasn't self-pity, it was protest, disguised in cursive. A map of medication. Other notes became chemical instructions, dosage breakdowns, pills listed by timing and side effects. One torn sheet reads, 1.5 tablets 3 times a day, heart cracked down the middle. Her handwriting deteriorates as the notes progress, correlating, experts say, with her growing dependency on barbiturates. These weren't journal entries, they were lifelines. Calculated, repeated, almost choreographed. A performance for one, herself. Love letters never sent. Among the most haunting discoveries were unsent letters. Raw, unfiltered, desperate. To Joe DiMaggio, please take me home. To President John F. Kennedy, you risk history's pity if you forget your promises. But the one that cuts deepest, a letter addressed simply, to me. Inside, keep the light on. Monsters hate light. This from a woman who lit up every screen she touched. Her final words. Monroe's last known entry was written fewer than 36 hours before her death in August 1962. Just 7 words. Fear is a room without doors. Psychiatrists now believe Marilyn suffered from what we'd recognize today as bipolar spectrum disorder. Back then, it had no name, no diagnosis, just prescriptions. And she documented all of it, not to be found, but to stay grounded. Marilyn Monroe was never just the platinum blonde. She was Norma Jean, trying to survive inside a myth she didn't create but had to maintain. She wrote, "I know I am fiction to them, but I have to live in non-fiction." She didn't want to be remembered only in diamonds and tragedy. She wanted to be understood, not as a bombshell, not as a cautionary tale, but as a woman. Sensitive, self-aware, and fighting like hell to keep the curtain from falling too soon. Number 4. Vivien Leigh, Madness in the Margins. She was Scarlett O'Hara. She was Blanche Dubois. She was the picture of elegance, poised, radiant, adored. But behind Vivien Leigh's iconic performances was a woman fighting a war no audience ever saw. In 2013, the Victoria and Albert Museum in London acquired her personal archive. 7,500 items, letters, photographs, and a lifetime of diaries, dating from her teenage years to just days before her death in 1967. What those pages revealed was not just a star, but a survivor of brilliance, bipolar disorder, and heartbreak, meticulously documented in her own handwriting. Told Lee Holman, left with Larry. That single line, dated June 10, 1937, marked the day she ended her marriage to pursue Laurence Olivier. Short, cold, life-altering. It's also the moment many biographers now consider the turning point in both her career and her emotional health. Their love story would become legend, but her diary? It tells a more difficult truth. When mania meets metrics, Vivien Leigh didn't write poems or dreamy monologues. She wrote charts, symbols, numbers. Over the span of 2 decades, she recorded 22 manic episodes, 5 major depressive crashes, coded symbols to track her mental state, cross-checked notes with known symptoms of what we now diagnose as bipolar disorder. One page from the troubled set of Elephant Walk simply reads, "Saw tigers today and tigers inside." Shortly after, she was replaced by Elizabeth Taylor following a breakdown. The applause algorithm Vivien Leigh measured everything. Every premiere night was scored from 1 to 10 based on applause intensity. She tracked the acoustics of every theater. She calculated the delay time between final bow and audience rise one night in Manchester. Clapping delayed by 2.4 seconds. No standing. Blamed weather. For Leigh, the audience wasn't just watching. They were data points, a barometer for her worth. Love, counted her marriage to Laurence Olivier, wasn't spared the numbers either. A 1949 entry analyzing one of Olivier's stage kisses reads, "Hamlet's kiss, 68% stage, 32% mine." A chilling calculation that suggests how deeply her identity blurred with performance, and how much she feared disappearing between the two. Finances of a star in Freefall Leigh was as precise with her finances as she was with her feelings. War bond ledgers, £54,220 spent, over $2.4 million today. Donations logged to the pound, monthly acting stipends cross-referenced against mood fluctuations. By the end, Vivien Leigh's diaries had become clinical, statistical, her soul measured in applause, her health in symptoms, her love in percentages. But that doesn't make her cold. It makes her desperate to hold control in a world that demanded perfection, but offered no safety net. She once played Blanche Dubois, a woman who famously depended on the kindness of strangers. But Vivien? She depended on numbers. And when the math stopped working, the silence became louder than any ovation. Number 5. Rock. Hudson. The leading man's last script to the world, Rock Hudson was the ultimate matinee idol. Tall, handsome, charming, a man who made women swoon, and Hollywood money. But in July 1985, when the news broke that Hudson was dying of AIDS, the illusion cracked. America didn't just lose a star, it was confronted with a secret it was never ready to face. What few knew at the time, what even fewer wanted to know, was that Hudson had already documented his private war. In a journal smuggled out of a Paris hotel by a nurse after his collapse at the Ritz, we found 56 handwritten pages. What they revealed was a man living in silence, while dying in detail. T cells, 17. Weight, 143 pounds. Shame, immeasurable. That was the first line of the journal, and from there it only got more devastating. These weren't ramblings, they were clinical logs. Organized, methodical, a roadmap of pain. He recorded experimental ACT drug reactions, heart medication regimens, night sweats, cough durations, and skin discoloration. A heartbreaking comparison of studio insurance payouts versus career losses if he came out publicly. One margin note reads, "Reveal truth, career collapse, don't sack death in third-person drag." Manufacturing the lie for over 2 decades, Hudson orchestrated 38 staged photo ops with starlets, models, and actresses, all to protect the heterosexual image the studio built for him. These setups were carefully logged, often with rehearsal notes. Kiss cheek. Don't linger. Smile through teeth. He wasn't just acting on screen. He was acting off it, 24/7. Voice will crack. Hudson's notes include deeply personal reminders. Call lifelong friend Doris Day. Voice will crack. Write letter to Reagan. Won't matter. Final trip. Don't let them see the 4th line. One particularly chilling entry references a secret 1963 charity gala conversation with Ronald Reagan before Reagan's presidency. Ron smiled like he didn't know. He did. The note drips with betrayal, not just from friends, but from an industry and a country that looked away. The final role, a man in hiding. Even as Hudson was deteriorating, he tracked the performances around him. Interview script for People Mag. Clean, strong, hopeful. Film at 11. Reality? Morphine. His journal wasn't just a record of illness, it was a posthumous expose, a confession from a man forced to lie for survival. Rock Hudson didn't die with secrets, he died with receipts. His journal is more than a medical record. It's the last private script of a man who spent his whole life delivering lines he didn't write. Hudson once said, "Being a heartthrob is fine, until it's the only thing you're allowed to be." But in these pages, he was finally more. A truth teller. A man reclaiming the narrative. One painfully honest line at a time. Number 6. Elizabeth Taylor. Diamonds, Diaries, and the Weight of Legacy. She was more than violet eyes and diamonds. She was fire wrapped in silk. A woman married 8 times, adored by millions, and envied by almost everyone. But behind the press junkets and perfume deals, Elizabeth Taylor kept a secret vault. Not of jewels, though there were plenty, but of words. Over 7,000 pages of diary entries locked inside a private suite in her Bel Air mansion known only to staff as the Blue Room. In 2022, biographer Kate Anderson Brower was granted unprecedented access. What she found wasn't the musings of a diva, they were the battle plans of a woman who had turned survival into strategy. Cleopatra budget at $2 million. Already smells like Farah. That's the very first diary entry from the Cleopatra shoot, Taylor's most infamous production. She would go on to meticulously log every single overrun, catering expenses, location delays, wardrobe misfires, and she watched in real time as the budget ballooned to $44 million, a staggering number for the 1960s. In the margins, she doodled a diamond and labeled it, "Someday." It would become the 69-carat gem Richard Burton gave her. She didn't just wear wealth, she predicted it. Marriage by the numbers. Richard Burton appears in her diary 1,392 times. Her final husband, Larry Fortensky, just 27. Taylor treated romance like a production. Fights were rated on a 1 to 10 scale. Fight level 6 stormed out. He returned with scotch. Reconciliations were paired with champagne brand and dosage. Recovery Krug, 2 glasses. Every heartbreak had a timestamp. Every kiss had a postmortem. Addiction appraised her battle with painkillers wasn't buried. It was itemized. After a 1961 tracheotomy, she began logging every Demerol injection. Time-stamped pain-rated emotional fallout calculated 3:47 p.m. Relief equals 7. Sadness equals 9. Danger equals yes. Taylor didn't romanticize her pain. She audited it. Hollywood activist, global tactician. Her entries during the AIDS crisis revealed not just empathy, but precision leadership. In 1985, she personally tracked 17 donor calls, $47 million pledged Sinatra's check. Not counted yet. This wasn't PR fluff. It was logistical warfare against stigma, one celebrity call at a time. She also logged pay disparities in shocking detail. My Cleopatra salary, $1 million. Audrey's for My Fair Lady, $750,000. Next to it, sorry Audrey, get a volcano. Elizabeth Taylor wasn't the soft-focused legend the world wanted her to be. Her diary tells the truth. She was a shrewd negotiator, a wounded woman with a steel spine, and a humanitarian who put every dollar to work, even if it started as guilt. She knew what she was worth. She knew what love cost, and she made damn sure her legacy wouldn't be left to headlines or hearsay. If they want to tell my story, she wrote in 1994, let them start with the truth. It's heavy. But I carried it in heels. Number 7. James Dean, the rebel with a fragile heart. James Dean was the face of rebellion. Leather jackets, cigarettes, brooding stares. In just 3 films, he became immortal. But in 2023, the world discovered something that cracked the myth wide open. A 60-page handwritten diary tucked away for decades in the estate of his former agent, Jane Deasy, was quietly auctioned. Inside it, not the confidence of an icon, but the confessions of a boy afraid to be forgotten before he was ever truly known. Speed is only borrowed. One page features a hand-drawn sketch of the Porsche 550 Spider, the very car Dean would die in. Underneath it in pencil, speed is only borrowed. He was 24 years old. This wasn't foreshadowing. It was premonition, a realization that he was living on borrowed time in a machine that moved faster than the truth ever could. Fears I pretend are thrills. Dean kept a list he updated weekly titled, Fears I Pretend Are Thrills. It had 92 entries by August 1955. Abandonment. Being ordinary. Laughing too loud alone. That the mask won't come off. These weren't just the musings of a troubled actor. They were red flags waving from the edge of a cliff the world refused to see. Roles rejected? Ego recorded another section? A rejection ledger. From here to eternity, no picnic, no, the silver chalice, no. Each missed role was logged beside a column labeled, I'll show them. And in many ways, he did. But the diary shows something else too. A boy keeping score because he didn't believe anyone else would. Hollywood deals with a price. The most controversial line, tucked between 2 entries, is a single sentence. 1954, tryst with studio exec. Trade, Buick and a promise. That one sentence changed how biographers saw him. Dean wasn't just a rebel, he was a young actor playing the same dangerous games that shaped and broke many careers. The mask tightens. He writes often about the burden of fame and self-image. The mask sticks tighter after every autograph. People like the echo, but I miss my voice. These aren't metaphors, they're cries for authenticity in a town built on illusion. A letter never sent. There's also a folded letter addressed to choreographer Jack Simmons. It was never mailed. I think you'd like the real me. if I ever find him again. The letter ends with a doodle of a cigarette burning down to the filter. James Dean wasn't just a rebel without a cause. He was a young man crushed beneath the weight of expectations and terrified of being forgotten the moment the camera stopped. His diary didn't glorify fame. It questioned it, feared it, measured it. He once said, "Dream as if you'll live forever. Live as if you'll die today." But in these pages, we see what he really meant. Legacy isn't the echo you leave. It's the silence that follows. Was James Dean more myth or mirror? Let us know in the comments. And if his story moved you, like and subscribe, because on Classic Hollywood, we give the final word to the legends themselves.